Good evening, everyone. My name is Gus Kurtz. Welcome to the Planning Advisory Board meeting. It is October the 9th. The time is 6:03 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order. The first order of business is a roll call for our members: Melanie Hartwig Davis,
Present.
Lawrence Levens, Van Mason, Elizabeth Rossberg, Dawn Stolfus,
Present.
and myself, Gus Kurtz. Edward Evans is not present. With 6 members, we do have a quorum. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for this evening?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The agenda is approved. A motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? The minutes are approved. Before we start the PAB meeting, I want to provide the context of the Planning Advisory Board. There's a lot of folks who may not be familiar with our work. The PAB is a volunteer board of 7 members appointed by the county executive. Each member comes from one of the 7 county districts. The duties and functions of the Planning Advisory Board are provided in the county charter. We make advisory recommendations on master plans, comprehensive zoning maps, and the capital budget and programs. Tonight's agenda is a public hearing on Region 3 draft plan for comprehensive rezoning maps. The meeting is designed so the PAB can hear from you before we start our deliberations. Patrick Hughes, a senior planner from Region 3, will give us a brief overview from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Patrick?
Thank you, Ben. It's working. Thank you. Can everybody hear me now? Yeah. Good evening, and thanks to everybody for coming out to this. It's really important that you're here, and we're glad that you are. As Gus said, my name is Patrick Hughes. I'm the senior planner who worked on this Region 3 planning process. During this process, the Office of Planning and Zoning worked closely with the county executive and county council appointed stakeholder advisory committee. And so I want to give a special thanks to those folks who dedicated a lot of time putting this together and participating and preparing these discussions. A few weeks ago, the Office of Planning and Zoning provided a briefing on the region plan and the comprehensive zoning process with highlights of the draft Region 3 plan and some of the recommended zoning changes. OPC did a lot of talking that evening, so tonight is going to be your night to talk, and we will listen. The presentation from several weeks ago, that is recorded and it's posted on the Region 3 hub site, and that's found at www.aacounty.org/region3. Tonight, I'm going to provide just a brief overview of the next steps in this process and a timeline. Next slide, please. So first, I am going to back up just a little bit to give us some context. So at the September 18th meeting, you will have heard an overview of the draft plan and highlights of some of the zoning recommendations that the PAB is going to be considering. Because some of the members of the public, you all may not have been able to attend or had a chance to review a recording of that meeting, I'll provide a very quick refresher. So the draft plan and the recommended zoning they work together to set up a policy environment that does several things. One, reinforcing the Glen Burnie Town Center and its character as a high-density, mixed-use area. There's a recommendation for a master plan that identifies that area's needs and specific solutions, and then zoning that encourages more of a people-oriented and high-density focus to the Glen Burnie Town Center itself, and an auto-oriented commercial area along corridors like Maryland 2. There are policies to encourage redevelopment and revitalization of aging commercial areas, including places like Marley Station Mall, 7409 B&A Boulevard, and then other underutilized areas. There are recommendations to preserve some of our stable residential neighborhoods around the region. So throughout Severn, a lot of the stable neighborhoods in Glen Burnie and Queenstown. There are recommendations that promote neighborhood scale local commercial along some of the lower level transportation corridors in the area, in ways that those would be more compatible with the surrounding residential area. There are recommendations to protect our natural areas and our parks and provide better access and connections for people to those areas, including, of course, the Severn Run Natural Area. And then, of course, promoting affordable housing, including zoning that permits somewhat greater density in certain areas that are near amenities and near transportation corridors. So one area that I pointed out at our last meeting was along the North Telegraph Road area, just south of Maryland 100, the Grover Road area, and then a couple of mixed-use areas, including 7409 B&A Boulevard, which is near the Cromwell Light Rail Station, and then also on Marley Neck Boulevard. Note that this, this comprehensive zoning process, we're only in the process we're only dealing with updating the zoning that is applied to the properties in Region 3. So these aren't updates to the zoning code itself that are happening through this comprehensive zoning process, only the zoning map and the geographic extent of the zoning boundaries that are on that map. Next slide, please. So I shared this slide at the last meeting. This summarizes the change in the different zoning categories based on the current draft that is before you all, the PAB now. And a quick note about these zoning categories for folks who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar. The R zones, those are our residential zones with numbers indicating increasing levels of density. The C is, those are commercial zones, again, different levels of intensity going from 1 to 4. Our W zones are industrial zones, and there are 3: industrial park, light and heavy industrial zones. MXD is our mixed use zone, and OS is our open space zoning. So I did not provide this last time, but I'll speak briefly about some of the changes in the zoning, the acreages based on the draft zoning map, comparing that to the zoning that is adopted and on the ground now. The OS zone experienced a significant increase in acreage in this draft map. There were a lot of changes between the OS zone and various residential zones, probably attributed to zoning corrections on Marley Neck, where we've aligned the OS zoning according to platted and built conditions in some of the tenured areas out on Marley Neck. There was also some correction of the OS zoning as it's applied to the Severn Run natural area, and a loss of the RLD zoning in that area. Did I just lose my mic? And speak super loud. Okay.
Not use it.
Turn back on.
Yeah. I'll come to you in a minute. Thanks. This Stony Creek Park represented a change from RLD zoning to OS, so that accounted for some of the increase in OS. And also there was some loss of R1 zoning as that changed over to OS zoning in this draft zoning map, and a lot of that happened out on Marley Neck Boulevard. There was some reduction of, yeah, this is not working, so yeah, let me borrow the. Thank you. Can we hear me? Yes. There was some reduction of the R15 zone to R10 among some communities and some particularly townhome complexes, as those were sort of right-sized in terms of the build density of the zoning. We recommended applying R10 zoning where that was the appropriate density as it's built on the ground today. There were increases in the mixed-use zoning, and that was attributable primarily to two areas. One was a 118 acre site on Marley Neck Boulevard that is recommended for MXDR, and that's a change from W1 industrial zoning. And then applying MXD transit zoning to several properties around Cromwell Station, including the 34 acre 74 B&A Boulevard. And there was a loss of some R5 zoning, again, out on Marley Neck Boulevard, where these were changed for consistency, oftentimes to OS zoning, to R10, and other zones that would match the build density with some of those new communities out on Marley Neck. Next slide, please. So if any of you have not had a chance to look at it, we have a hub site with all of this information available now. It is the website is at the bottom of the screen, aacounty.org/region3. This has all the information regarding this process, and you can review the draft plan as well as the draft zoning map, which is interactive. You can click around on it, zoom in, and I encourage you to do that if you have not already. There is also a link to sign up for our newsletter related to this process, and you can follow along. You'll get notices as we move forward. Next slide, please. And so where we are in this process right now, we have been meeting monthly with that appointed stakeholder advisory committee that I mentioned. The committee was made up of folks from all parts of the region, and we've been meeting with them since late last year. And with their help and with input gathered from the public in various surveys and questionnaires and outreach events, we've developed the draft region plan that is now before the PAB, and then the draft zoning that is under consideration. This is not the final step in the process, and I want to be very clear about that. After the Planning Advisory Board provides its review and its comments, the plan and the zoning map will be introduced to the county council, and they are the ones that have the authority to adopt the region plan and the draft zoning map. As I mentioned in the last meeting, this process started over a year ago and has included a bunch of opportunities for public participation. And so when the plan and the zoning map go to council, they're going to have recommendations from us, planning and zoning staff, as well as the stakeholder advisory committee, and then the planning advisory board. All of that's going to be noted for the council as they begin their consideration of these. Next slide, please. So this illustrates the planning advisory board process and then the next steps in this process. And as I mentioned, the initial PAB briefing was a couple of weeks ago and can be found on the hub site that I mentioned earlier. This briefing was just to give an overview of the draft plan and the zoning map. And then at that meeting, the public record for written testimony was opened, and written testimony can be submitted until October 23rd. And there's a link on that hub site that I mentioned where you can get in and get into a survey where you can submit your written testimony that way. So there's still plenty of time to receive any written comments that you all would like to make. Tonight is an opportunity for oral testimony, and we want to hear from you. The Planning Advisory Board will be deliberating and making their recommendation on November 20th. And at that point, the draft plan and the draft zoning map will have recommendations noted, as I said, from the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, from Planning and Zoning staff, and then from the Planning Advisory Board. Then we're going to move to the County Council for review and consideration. And again, County Council will have the ultimate authority on adopting the plan and the zoning map. So I encourage you to please stay engaged, tell your friends and your neighbors, and ask them to weigh in on this for us. Also note that at each stage of this process, the region's libraries have a copy of this draft plan, and they also have access to the online mapping tools. So if any of you don't have any computer access at home, you can visit our libraries and be engaged that way. Next slide, please. So here's our information, our mailing address, if you would like to get in touch with us that way. Our phone number, if you need more information. Again, the hub site is up there, and our email, region3@aacounty.org. At this point, I'll hand it over to Chairman Kurtz to begin the public hearing.
Thank you, Patrick. I would like to recognize the chair of the county council, Mrs. Pickard. I know I saw you somewhere. There you go. Thank you for being here. Hey, the planning advisory board will now open for public hearing. Every speaker will be given 2 minutes per property, and we have a list of speakers that have signed up here. But I will make the note very important that every person tonight that wants to speak will be given the opportunity to speak. You're given 2 minutes, but I must insist, if you want to speak, come up to the microphone. And the very, very important, the reason being is we have 2 of our members are on Zoom. And if you speak from your seat, they cannot hear you. Also, this is a recorded public testimony, so we want to make sure that we have you on record. So if you want to speak, I will open it up after we get through our list. For anyone that wants to speak, you can come down and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. When you're called to speak, please come to the front and provide your name and address. And before you provide your comments, if there is a changed zoning order number and you know the number, that will help us reference it and find it in our binder. We'll provide you permission to unmute the mic, and again, make sure you state your name and address. To respect everyone's time, please try to limit it to 2 minutes. In our public hearings, we listen and we note your comments. We may ask you a question, a follow-up question, but we will not make any recommendations on zoning changes this evening. The OPZ staff will not respond to comments. They are here and they will hear you and they will note what your questions. If you have a question for OPZ, they will note that and get back to you. The staff will prepare a summary of all the comments received, and this board will deliberate and make our recommendations on the draft Region 3 plan and comprehensive zoning changes in our meeting on November the 20th. I will call 3 names at a time, and you may come down and be ready to speak. So at this point, the first speaker is David Katz. The next speaker is Conrad Bidinger. Mr. Katz, the floor is yours.
Yes, David Katz, 2410 Evergreen Road, Gambros, Maryland, 21054. I'm speaking on change application CZ-R3-GBN-0015. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this evening. I'm attorney on behalf of the applicant here and testifying in favor of the requested zoning change from RLT W1 to R5. The Office of Planning and Zoning's recommendation is that the property remain zoned RLT, and that is consistent with the adopted land use plan, and an R5 designation would not be compatible with the neighborhood. And we disagree with that position. The property is approximately 20 acres. It is, and I do have some handouts. I can certainly email. I appreciate that. I had a few more, but I couldn't get the website to do more than one attachment. So anyway, but the property is an old subdivision, an old R5 subdivision. that was subdivided in 1943, further updated in 1963. The zoning history on the property. Bear with me 1 second. Sorry. In 1972, the property was initially zoned, I'm sorry, in 1952, the property was initially zoned heavy industrial and agricultural. In 1972, it was rezoned to R5 and R1, in a small portion, but predominantly R5. During the 1989 comprehensive rezoning, it was then downzoned to RLD and open space. My client tells me at the time it was downzoned, that the Office of Planning and Zoning told them that they could always get their R5 zoning back at that time, at some date in the future. And in the 2000, my 2 minutes, or? Okay. Anyway, very quickly, I believe that if you look at the surrounding area, there's light industrial, there's R2, there's R5. This property is not in a greenway. It's an old subdivision that's existed since the 40s. It's in planned service for sewer, planned sewer service for water. There's nothing in the general development plan that doesn't say that this is not appropriate to zone R5. So given the infrastructure that's planned for there, the surrounding zoning categories, the fact that it's an old existing subdivision, a higher designation, I think is appropriate. R5, restoring the R5 or potentially R2. Sorry, and thank you for the time.
Good question.
Sure.
Use of the farm.
It's unused, it is like, so a forester, Kevin Haynes, surveyed the property recently. And did a summary which I can share with the group, but found that there was nothing significant from an environmental standpoint on the property. That it had a beetle infestation, a lot of the pines were dying, no significant trees, and not, and no substantial forest.
Okay, can you submit those documents?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I need that. Mr. Captain, you have that mic, yes? Okay, I'm getting that.
Sorry, Gus.
Okay, question, Elizabeth and Dawn, do you have any questions?
Yes, for David. I'm sorry, I froze for a moment. I had to get back on. So my question, David, is based on your handout, and I don't think the others were able to see that. What is around you right now? It doesn't look like there is any R5 around you.
Mr. Rosberg, so not directly adjacent is light industrial W1. There is RA zone property that's owned by the county adjacent, but approximately a mile down the road and on the waterfront, you have the Lombardi beachfront community zoned R5. And then I have the name which I'll share via email, but there is 2 other beachfront communities that are zoned R2 in very close proximity. So it is not a wholly consistent RA, RLD zone area. There's actually a fairly mixed, a mix of densities.
Okay, and then can you tell us, currently it's zoned RLD and W1. You're not looking for any more W1. Is that just a very small sliver that you're looking to do
Very
the whole
small.
thing R5?
Correct. It's and I will share again with the Office of Planning and Zoning. I believe it's less than an acre that makes up the W1 currently.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any information you can give us would be helpful, including that zoning history. That was hard to
Absolutely.
hear you because there were a lot of dates.
Sterling Safe from the Office of Planning and Zoning provided me a summary which I'll forward on to the group.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you, Mr. Katz. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to Mr. Bittinger. Before we do that, Mr. Hager, You're gonna have 4 properties you're gonna discuss, so get ready, please. Mr. Mr. Benninger, the floor is yours.
My name is Conrad Bidinger. I got a piece of property at 7560 Solly Road in Glen Burnie. This is the zoning number CZ R3 GBN 0023. The property's been in my family since 1972, 50 years. When it was originally purchased by my father, it was zone G. It's just a general purpose. You could build just about anything. You could build anything at all on there. The county then, when they went to affordable zoning numbers, it was zone W2, and then they downzoned it through the years to W1, and then to residential. In 2009, I got grandfathered in at W1, non-conforming. I run a heavy equipment and dump truck business, construction yard down there. And I would like to get it back to what the original zoning was, which would now be C4. The county has said that with the W1 zoning, it would be more clean cut if it was just that they don't want to continue to have the non-conforming. So W1 wouldn't do me any good because it doesn't meet my requirements for having to have my outside storage for the trucks and equipment, and I got some storage sheds there. So W2 is what they're trying to push, but really C4 is what I'm trying to get. It would be better off to be C4, be more clean cut across the board. It's been in my family for 50 years that way. We're not doing anything different there now than when we started 50 years ago. Around me, there's an industrial park across the street. There's some green area to the right of me, and the property to the left of me. I know the man next to me. He'd like to get up zone also or change his zoning, so I don't have a problem with him doing that. I'm sure he don't have a problem with me doing what I want to do. So I'm just trying to keep it the same way it's been for 50 years when we bought that property, instead of having to go with a non-conforming status.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benninger. I do have a question. The same use for 50 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, also, it's a small piece of property. It's a little over half an acre.
That's correct. It's about
So it's long and narrow.
It's 72 feet by 400. It's long and narrow. Everything I do, I got one shot in and one shot out. I got to keep all my sidelines tight to the sides as much as possible so that I can operate proficiently in there with my trucks.
So knowing the setback requirements for W1 versus C4, W1 would be very limiting
That's correct.
because of the setback requirements on a lot that's only 72 feet wide,
That's correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, any questions from board members? Elizabeth?
Sir, if you were to continue W1 as you have been, you can continue as non-conforming use and continue doing exactly what you have been doing for the last 50 years without changing anything. Why do you want to change to C4? Are you expanding? Are you changing?
I'm not expanding. I'm going to stay just the way it has been. But the county, I have a letter here from the county saying that the next zoning hearing, whatever you call this here, the
Rezoning.
yeah, the whole rezoning, that they said that I should try to recommend to get away from the W1,
What education?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you hear that, Elizabeth?
No, thank you. Could you repeat?
Rezoning, the county recommended that at the next comprehensive rezoning, instead of maintaining the W1 non-conforming, that I should try to go back to what it was originally.
So for everyone to hear, Mr. Bittinger said that he has a letter from the county stating that at the next comprehensive zoning process, he should apply for a zoning that more accurately matches his use instead of continuing his non-conforming use. Is that correct, Mr. Bittinger?
Correct.
Thank you. Did you hear that, Elizabeth?
I did. Thank you, Jessica. So why would not OPZ recommend, based on the county sending him a letter to apply for C4, why would not OPZ support that?
We'll find out.
A quick question, what are your neighbors zoned as and what are you surrounded by?
I'm surrounded by an industrial park across the street. To the right-hand side of me,
W1 across the street and to the right-hand side.
it's part of a large parcel where they want to build warehouses. I'm not sure what that zoning is. To the left of me, man that owns the property to the left of me, he got down zoned through the years also, and I believe he's trying to get, rezoned also. It's just a vacant piece of property, and then there's, I'm not sure what they're doing behind
So
it.
it sounds like a lot of industrial.
A lot of industrial.
Lawrence, CXS Realty owns a 96-acre parcel that is right next to this property. Any other questions from board members?
Could the gentleman supply a copy of the letter from the county to the PAB, please?
Okay, noted. Dawn, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Granger.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hager. Mr. Hager has 5 properties that he will speak with. After Mr. Hager, we have Guy Stanton and James Mallory are going to join Mr. Hager and speak. The floor is yours, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Phil Hager, Hager Land Use. The subject property is CZN R3 GDN 0017. It's just over half an acre in size and is located at 1003 Crane Highway South in Glen Burnie. The property is currently split zoned C3 on the north and C4 on the south. In the early stages of this rezoning process, we submitted an application requesting that the full property be rezoned C4. To their credit, the SAC and OPZ recognized that being split zoning was not a good idea. However, the remedy was to recommend that the entire property be C3. This property is a prime candidate for redevelopment. C4 zoning will facilitate its redevelopment and incentivize reinvestment. There is a natural growth boundary immediately to the north, which will halt any further spread of C4 in that direction. Grouping the C3 portion of this lot with the neighboring C4 properties to the south is a minor request with minor repercussions unless it facilitates the redevelopment into something more attractive that increases tax revenue, pride in the neighborhood, and creates employment opportunities. Then the impacts will be huge and they will all be positive. Kroger Electric, which is located next door, is also harmed by the same inexplicable zoning split. There does not seem to be a logical or defensible explanation for this division. There was a discussion at the SEC meeting about wanting to keep the C4 zoning south of Aquahart. However, the horse is out of the proverbial stable on that since there's already several properties north of that are zoned C4. I respectfully ask that you fix this problem by zoning the full property C4. And at this time, the property owner, Guy Stanton, is with us. I'm going to provide him with an opportunity to speak as well.
At this point, I'm supposed to say ditto. I thought I would come up here and sing. No, I think you've heard me sing before. Anyway, I'm Guy Stanton, I own that property, and he explained it well. What I really want to do is I want to develop the property, can't do that, limited, very limited C3, C4. And it's been that way for a long time. I've been involved with the property since 1998. I bought it in 2003 or 2, and it's been that way ever since. The reason why, of course, I want to cause a tax base that's better than it is now. I have this commercial property that's only 6 months a year. And so that's not very much tax base. So it's gonna affect me, and it will affect the county in a positive way. If I can develop our property and put a business on there, a retail business on there, and I'm very limited to do that if it's a C3 compared to a C4. So thank you for your time. Nice seeing you.
Question,
And yes,
current use.
current use, the current use is the world's best snowball state. Shade ice of all time. But anyway, that's my personal opinion.
How long has the snowball stand been there?
It's been there since 98. So,
Any other questions from board members?
Sorry, I was muted. Could you please tell us how much, it's only half an acre, how much of it is C3 and how much of it is C4 currently?
it's about an even split,
Thank you.
about right down the middle.
What are the businesses proposing?
Well, there's a lot of feasibility, things that can be put there. And, you know, it's multiple things. I don't even consider it because I can't do anything that's, recommended because it's a C3. The county wanted to go to all through C3, which is not really, the development process could be better for the county and for myself as if it's a C4.
Anybody here have a question? Elizabeth or Dawn, do you have another question?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Okay, Mr. Hager, your next property is? Your next property?
Yes, sir. The next property is CZN R3 GBN 0401. This, Mr. Mallory, going to come up after me on this one. Thank you. The subject property is located at 406 Crane Highway North in Glen Burnie. It's a 2-parcel property totaling approximately 1.7 acres. It's situated along Crane Highway in the intensely developed area of downtown Glen Burnie between Furnace Branch Road and Route 648. Crane Highway in this area is an arterial roadway, and this portion of this corridor has existed as a heavy commercial corridor for decades. The C4 zoning classification is intended to provide for highway commercial activities, and given all these criteria and these characteristics, that's exactly what we're seeking in this case. The property is currently a carpet retail sales, service, installation, storage, and commercial contractor business. The properties to the north and east across Crane Highway are all zoned or in the process of being rezoned C4. The parcel has direct frontage on Crane Highway and is currently zoned C3. The parcel to the rear is zoned R1, however, it has been used commercially for decades. The parcel to the rear is also a tractor trailer loading and unloading area, a staging area for incoming and outgoing deliveries, a parking area, and an accessory storage area. Incoming and outgoing deliveries on a large scale take place daily. All of these activities are in support of Mallory Carpet, whose office and showroom are situated predominantly on the front parcel, which, as was noted, is currently zoned C3. The commercial activities taking place on these 2 parcels are consistent with C4 zoning classification. We're talking about here more than just a retail operation. The property owner is asking that this property be matched to the ongoing business activities taking place in the corridor and the 2 parcels on which his business is currently situated. Changing this property zoning to C4 will not result in a change of character or use. It will merely recognize the commercial enterprise that has been existing at this location for decades. Thank you.
Mr. Mallory coming up?
Jim.
Well, the floor is yours.
How are you? One of my favorite things to do. I just wanted to say thank you guys for volunteering and being here and allowing me to at least explain what we're looking to do. I bought the property back in 2005 and bought it from Gavigan. And there was a lot behind it. It was cleared and so we had been operating our retail and contracting business back there. And then about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to purchase the land back there and found that it was R1. I thought it was R5.
R5.
Yeah, but anyways, we've been using this property and it really made a big difference because at one time, I don't know if you've really driven by there, but we used to have to stop traffic and take, for the 50-foot tractor trailers to come in so that we could unload and do that. Now they can just go back there and make their turn and head out. So it's been a really big deal. We just like to get the zoning to where it's consistent with, all the neighbors so that we can use it in an appropriate way.
Okay, I do have a question, or is the property all on one,
They're two parcels.
two parcels, are they on the same tax map, tax bill, or are they separate?
They're separate tax bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a site plan that you can submit for us?
One was not prepared as part of the process.
Okay. Any question from board members? Elizabeth, I see your hand, please.
Thank you. Can you, tell us, I assume that we're talking about 400 and 401 being back to back. 401 is 0.41 and it's C3 and C4. How much of it is C3 and how much of it is C4? Currently.
Elizabeth, we're specifically talking about 401.
No, we're talking, excuse me, Mr. Chair, I don't mean to contradict you, we're talking about 406.
For Green Highway.
But the CZ number is 0401, correct?
CZ number is 401.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me clarify, let me have that mic for 1 second.
The CZ number is 401. The address is 406 Crane Highway.
Okay. So I repeat my question. And I'm still confused because is 402 and 406 next to each other? You look like you were talking about both of them, Mr. Hager. No, just.
In just a moment, Ms. Rosberg, I will be talking about the adjoining property, which is, the address of that property is 402 Crane Highway.
Okay, so going back to 406 Crane Highway is split zone C3 and C4 and is half of an acre. How much of it is C3 and how much of it is C4? You're requesting
Ms. Rosberg, that was the
C4.
previous case. This one is comprised of two parcels, neither one of which is split zone. One is zone R5 and one is zone C3.
R5?
For CZ R3 GBN 401, I believe.
Our record reflects different, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, ours is.
It says 0401.
Elizabeth, it is 401 CZ, and our current zoning is incorrect listed on our sheet. So we'll clarify that.
Thank you. Thought it was
Any
me.
other questions? Dawn, any questions? Okay, Mr. Mallory, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to talk about CZ GBN 0400.
That's 402 greater.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the clarification. I'm glad to know that the mistake on the zoning table is not mine. It has happened before. I don't remember when, but I'm sure I've made a mistake. Okay, good evening. Again, Phil Hager, Hager Land Use. I'm here to talk about 402 Crane Highway, which is the adjoining property to the one I just was talking about. It's immediately located to the south. And this is CZN R3 DBN 0400. This site has more than 100 linear feet along Crane Highway in the same area as we were just speaking about. As we talked about, Crane Highway is an arterial zone, and C4, of course, it still has the same intent, and this area still has the same characteristics of being a heavy, intensive commercial corridor. The property is currently being used as an office, however. The owner wishes to redevelop in a manner which is consistent with the activities in the neighborhood. The properties to the north and east are all zoned or in the process of being rezoned C4. The subject property adjoins Mallory Carpet, which we just spoke about. Granting this request will encourage redevelopment and will incentivize beneficial activities. It is also consistent with sound land use planning activities in that it adjoins other C4 properties. During the SAC process, it was noted that the structure may have some level of cultural significance. However, there is no formal designation. This has raised concerns that perhaps rezoning may not be prudent. However, the property is already zone C3, so it's not like it's in a state of existing conservation. The best way to ensure conservation in this particular instance is to facilitate an environment where reinvestment in the property is encouraged. That's what C4 will do. This will help to avoid something that happens frequently in this county, unfortunately, is demolition through neglect. And that nothing will happen to a property that has some value historically because there's no appropriate incentive to do anything with it. Redevelopment activities can be done in a way that would encourage conservation, and the end result would be positive for all concerned. Thank you.
Any questions? Board members, Elizabeth Dawn, any questions? Okay, Mr. Hager, you have another property?
I have two more.
Okay, go ahead. CZ number, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property does not have a CZN number. It's a new application. The subject property is located at 1007 Crane Highway Southeast in Glen Burnie. It's a two-parcel property totaling 1.55 acres. It's adjoining the property that Mr. Stanton spoke about a short time ago. It is situated along Crane Highway in the same area, just north of Aquahart Road. The property is currently the home of Kroger Electric, a commercial construction contractor specializing in electrical construction. The property houses Kroger's business office, administrative headquarters, their storage and warehouse areas, fabrication facilities, and outside storage, including vehicles. The property is divided by an east-west zoning demarcation that separates the rear parcel, which is parcel 378, into two distinct zoning classifications, much like Mr. Stan's property to the north, to the west, excuse me. The northern portion of the parcel is zone 3, the southern is zone C4. There does not appear to be any discernible rationale for why this split is in this location. But most of this parcel is where the outside storage area for this commercial contractor takes place. He did receive a non-conforming use registration for the property. However, as we know, one of the purposes of this zoning process is to clean up non-conformities. And also, in the event that there would ever be any expansion necessary to any of the structures in the contractor storage area portion, a special exception would be necessary, which is quite expensive and certainly not predictable. So we would ask that would take place. Also, there's a portion of that rear property that's also zone R15. The property parcel has a very unusual shape. We would like the boundary of the C4 property to go back to the residential areas, but not extend on that long tail that extends into the interior of the residential area. We should leave that alone, which is currently R15. So I don't believe there's any way that we're not going to have a split zoning situation here in some shape or form before we're finished. We have to take any questions that you may have.
First question. 1007, the neighboring property's address is 1003.
Correct.
Is the zoning the same on both of those properties?
The zoning on the property to the north that adjoins the property to the south is the same until it becomes, I said that wrong. Yes, the zoning on that property on the south is the same as it is on the parcel to the north on its south side. Okay, but to the rear of the property, to the rear of the Kroger property is the second parcel, which is longer from a north-south perspective than the front parcel. And that rear parcel extends north, behind Mr. King's property, so that it's impacted by the same zoning split.
Same owners, 1003 and 1007.
No, Mr. Payne is the owner of the property at 1007. 1003 is owned by Kroger Electric.
You got it backwards.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you. 003, 1003 is Kroger Electric. 1007.
No, still.
Don't listen to what I say, listen to what I do. Yes, Kroger Electric is 1007.
Yes.
Mr. Hager, please submit the site plan. Even if it's hand-drawn, so we can see current use and so on.
Okay. I'm going to be meeting with planning staff, about that. We're gonna be looking at maps. Would that exercise be grateful for you?
That's fine.
Great.
And board members, any questions?
We do not have this application. It's a new application?
Yes, there's no CZ number.
Okay. Yeah, as much information would be helpful because you were talking about the rear and the north and the south. And it's non-conforming use at the moment. So as much as you
It
can
is
give us.
difficult to cover all these activities that are going on a parcel like this in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have one or two.
Okay, Mr. Hager has two more properties to discuss, so we're going to limit him to 2 minutes each. And then we're going to hear the rest of the list.
Mr. Chair, would you prefer to hear other people and then I can come back at some point?
No, we're going to get you done. And then we have about 10 or 12 people that have signed up. So if you have not signed up to speak, please come down front. And Jessica's right here. Let Jessica know that you would like to speak. So Mr. Hager, you have the floor.
Here you go.
102.
0102. Thank you. Okay, the next one, the number is 0102. CZN R3 GBN 0102.
DB and MRB.
It is MRV. You caught me. Okay, the property is located 450 Elton Road in Millersville. It's 3.1 acres. MRV, yes. The property is currently split zone C1 OS. OPZ is recommending that we eliminate the split in favor of C1. The owner concurs, however, given the property's direct frontage along Elton near a very busy intersection, which I'm told, its relatively large size, frontage dimensions, and the vehicular traffic in this area, and the fact that it has its very own traffic light that controls the ingress to this parcel. They're requesting C4 for this property. Because it makes the most sense. There is no C1 in the area. The closest C1 property is 2,000 feet away. The existing zoning of C1 has stymied development in recent years. There have been a number of people who've had this property under contract and have attempted to try to redevelopment. It's a former Lucky site. It was a retail operation. This area really is not a location that would support an activity like that. Granting this request will encourage the appropriate redevelopment and will incentivize the commercial and business activities. It's also consistent with the land use designation in the area.
That way.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? Okay, this is a question.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on the right one. CZR3 MRV 0102
Okay.
and located at 8450 Elverton Road in Northville.
Correct.
Okay, and then our forms say that There's no requested zoning. Mine says NA.
That was my question.
It's a new application, I believe.
NA is not applicable, it's new application.
No?
It's not a number.
It has a number because it was previously, it split zone OSC1. And in previous activity, SAC recommended it to go to 100% C1.
What's your requested zoning?
C4.
That's what we're saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, are there no any questions?
It's my question. Thank you.
One more, Phil. Yep, one more. So, what is this one? This one is, Greenway Drive, 4661.
GDN.
Okay, my folks from the dance studio, you're on deck. Good evening, Phil Hager of Hager Land Use. I'm representing the Glen Burnie Recreation Association in this case. The property is located at 326 Greenway Road in Glen Burnie. The site is currently split zone R5 and open space. In earlier phases of this region plan process, OPZ and the SAC recommended that we make the entire property open space. Unfortunately, in attempting to rectify the problem, they've made it worse. I don't mean to discourage or to disparage the SAC or to be critical, but I suspect that one of the problems that they were under the impression that this property was owned by the county. In fact, it's private property. It's owned by the Glen Burnie Recreation Association. A portion of that site has been home to the GBRA administrative offices and an active dance studio for approximately 35 years. It's a commercial use. The existing R5 portion of the property is most likely a holdover to when that dance studio building was actually a residence, but that was from the 1980s. The balance of the property is accessory to the studio and is used for many purposes by different community groups. GBRA is happy to allow the activities to occur on this site, usually through some type of donation or other compensation. That makes this portion of the property commercial in nature as well. GBRA is engaged in long-range planning activities associated with the future uses of the undeveloped portion of the property. There are two very important takeaways here. One, the uses here are commercial in nature, and two, just because an area is undeveloped does not mean that it is open space. GBRA is respectfully requesting that you rezone this property small business. That fits in nicely with the existing land uses of town center to the east and R5 to the west. That is precisely the purpose of the small business zoning district, why it was created to serve as a buffer and a transitionary zone between residential uses and more intense commercial uses. It also captures the activities that are taking place here. Keep in mind that open space does not permit dance studios or any related activities. The GBRA and the dance school have been fixtures within the Glen Burnie area for more than almost seven decades. It would be a travesty to allow this oversight to cause this important community service and its longstanding tradition to the community to be terminated. Thank you.
Okay, Phil. Would like to speak?
They will.
Okay. Please, take your name and your address.
My name is Charlotte Price, 326 Greenway, Glen Burnie. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Price. I represent the Glen Burnie Recreation Association. I started with GBR dance program 45 years ago. I've been a member of the association and an assistant teacher for approximately 40 years, and I have been an officer of the association for 30 years. The GBRA is a not-for-profit organization and has dedicated itself to service and betterment of the residents of Glen Burnie for 69 years. The property at 326 Greenway is owned by Glen Burnie Recreation Association and not the county. It has been the site of the GBR administrative offices and an active dance studio for approximately 35 years. We are a commercial use. The county wants to rezone as open space. We do not support this designation. Open space zoning does not permit dance studios or any related accessory uses. It will not allow us to make productive use of the structure where our dance school is located or the rest of the property. Forcing us to conform to open space use standards means that we will have to shut down our dance school and any other activities that we support. It also means we'll have to stop our long-range planning activities for constructive future use of these 5 acres. This is one of the most densely populated parts of the county, and we've been working on future plans for this property for the benefit of our community. Open space zoning will hurt us very badly. We respectfully request that we are rezoned small business. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Bagnell, 326 Greenway. I've been a member of Lumber and Recreation since 1986, and I'm currently the treasurer. I started taking lessons with Lumber and Rec in 1968. That was before it moved to this property. I've had 3 sisters. Both of my daughters, 3 nieces, a great niece, have all participated in this dance program, as well as many people in the community. I taught school for Anne County for 30 years. We had many of our students there, as well as their children and now some of their grandchildren at this program. So it is very much a community place, and we'd like to keep it going. So we truly hope that you will continue, let us continue it. And I agree with what Charlotte said.
Thank you.
Good evening, I am Caitlin Naylor, and I'm also speaking to 326 Greenway, Glen Burnie. I've been involved with GBRA since 2015, not as long as my friend here, but still quite a bit. With my daughter and I have been in the program, and just within the last 5 years, I've become a member of the association outside of dance classes. And I just wanted to mention that I agree with the comments made and recommendations made by Charlotte. And I hope that Glen Burnie Recreation Association will be able to continue to serve dance instruction to the community. And thanks for the opportunity to express my opinion on this matter.
Thank you. I have a question, Bill, and you could probably answer this.
The request to zoning is SP.
SB, small business.
Okay, and you may be able to answer this. Your neighboring property is 7 acres of property that is owned by GBRA, is that correct?
No, it's 5.1 acres.
5, okay, so it shows 7, but,
This property is you right.
right, so that's 5 acres?
5.1 acres, and this is part of that property.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay,
Right here. Yes, ma'am.
right. All right, board members, any questions? Melanie?
Thank you. Could you tell a little bit more about your plans? You said you've got some long-term plans you've had in the works for a while.
In the past, it's been used in a number of different ways with the advent of COVID. There was sort of a cessation of active activities at this location. So the board has recently begun to try to put together plans for how they're going to effectively utilize the rest of this. Much of those plans at this point are really very preliminary and in the drafting stages. But we don't want to eliminate the opportunity to do anything at all by having an open space.
Thank you. Elizabeth or Dawn, questions? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, members, thank you very much for your forbearance. I appreciate you organizing this so I can do all my cases at one time.
Thank you. Okay, the next speakers will be Dwayne Woodburn, Shep Tullier, and Craig Mercier. Michael, can you see if Mr. Woodburn is online? That would be CZ MRV 0007.
I don't see him online. You asked me to raise it.
Mr. Woodburn, raise your hand, please, if you're online.
The raise hand feature is under reactions. Mr. Woodburn, if you're online. We can come back.
Mr. Toyer? This is CZ SVN 0002. My name is Shep Touye. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am speaking about CZR 3 SVN 002. This is a 6.4 acre property. It's located on the west side of North Telegraph Road. And the draft zoning map, the draft zoning map recommends R5 for the property. It's in the existing category for public water and public sewer. The applicant's application requested R10 zoning to cluster townhouses or townhome style multifamily homes to provide for housing diversity needed in this area. There is an R10 townhouse subdivision known as Young Farm Estates directly across Telegraph Road. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee review of the zoning request for R10 initially resulted in a recommendation of R5 zoning, and also for 22 parcels to the south, one very large R5 zone. But all of those parcels to the south are developed with residential dwellings. 2 or 3 of the houses are on 2 lots under the same ownership. Because they contain homes today, the development on those tracts to get additional housing in this area is likely to be very far off in the future. The subject property I'm speaking about today is vacant and could be developed within the next few years. We did visit the committee in July and asked for reconsideration of the R10 zoning. And at that meeting, the Stakeholder Advisory Committee voted to recommend R10 zoning for the subject property. But to our surprise, when the draft planning advisory recommended zoning maps were published for Region 3, we saw that the zoning for 7733 Telegraph Road was changed back to R5. In Plan 2040, there is a 2023 progress report. The county executive's message cited key strategies to help provide more diverse housing options in more communities in the county. When the Region 3 plan process got underway, the committee was given a presentation in April that showed the holding capacity analysis for this Region 3 area was a surplus of 1,192 units, which means that they had pretty significant zoned land already that could accommodate another 1,100 units. But in September, the updated holding capacity analysis was submitted, and it indicates that there's actually a deficit of 2,949 housing units, almost 3,000 units in Region 3, which would call for additional zoning, in my opinion. Rezoning Telegraph Road property to R10 would help to address this deficiency and be consistent with the executive's policy of meeting the need for additional housing options. It would be consistent with the justification that's shown on the preliminary draft zoning map table, which states this change to R5 is consistent with Plan 2040 BD11 in providing for a variety of housing types and designs to allow for residents through all residents housing choices at different stages of life and all income levels. A change to R5 will promote additional housing opportunities along Telegraph Road. We believe the R10 implements the goal better than the R5. We respectfully ask the Planning Advisory Board to consider placing the R10 zoning back on this subject property, which would be consistent with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee recommendation, and we will be submitting written materials. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions from board members? Elizabeth, your hand is raised. Question, please.
How much of the current 6.39 acres is OS?
I don't have the exact number, but it is not recommended for the OS to be retained, like many of the other residential properties in this process.
Can you submit a site plan showing the split zoning
Yes, we can.
Okay, we'll get a site plan, Elizabeth.
Okay, that'd be helpful. And I mean, that's a huge jump. How is Telegraph Road gonna handle that increase in density, traffic, and everything else if you go to R10?
Well, I'll say two things. Number one is any development has to have a traffic analysis and you have to meet the traffic standards. So you can.
I can hear him. No, that's fine. We can hear him.
Okay. So any development has to undergo a traffic capacity analysis and a road rating review, and nothing gets approved unless it can meet these standards. But I'll just remind you that in addition to the R10, there's probably, I don't know, 25 acres of R5 that we are contiguous to, that has also been upzoned. But those are the properties that really do not have a realistic opportunity to redevelop unless all those people sell their properties or decide to start to assemble them. And that's, in my opinion, highly unlikely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Craig Mercier. And that would be SBN 0003.
Good evening, my name is Craig Mercier. 586 Jones Road, application number SBN 0003. This is a 1 acre piece of property that is zoned W1, and I'm requesting that it be zoned W2. I had a permit last year that expired to build an office building, a parking lot for 18 employees, a shop, and I put in the underwater stormwater management, and I did all the site work, but the permit expired last year. I started a small business up 5 years ago. I have 1 pickup truck, 2 trailers, an outside storage tank, and 1 ride-on machine. Jones Road, 586 Jones Road is a dead-end street, mostly zoned W2. There is W1 to the north and south of me. It is adjacent to Route 100 and it is adjacent to the airport, opposite 100. This will have less impact on anybody on the street, as there is a directional drilling company, a tree company, a towing company, and a warehouse right to my south. I've contacted the neighborhood association, and I'm open to site visits if anybody wants to come see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions from board members? Thank you. Michael, did you check and see if we have the virtual? Our next speaker is Matthew Morgan. And then after Matthew, Daniel Weber. Matthew, the floor is yours.
My name is Matthew Fortune, case number CZR3 SVN-0008. It's an application to rezone the property from R5 to R15. When I reviewed the video for the regional plan meeting, it seemed as if this application was looked at favorably, but there were some concerns by the board members. I submitted online, I submitted some exhibits. Did you guys receive the exhibits? There was a letter and then there were 2.
Yes.
Okay. So it seemed like the 2 concerns were the Jacobs Road being a local road. Jacobs Road through that area is actually a collector. So I wanted to make note of that. And then the other major concern that the board had was there's two fingers of the properties, and the property consists of 5 parcels, 2 fingers that come out to Jacobs Road. And it seemed as if the concern was that if this property was zoned R15, that there would be that R15 townhouse construction adjacent to the residential parcels right off of Jacobs. I would like to note that when I purchased the property, I have a written agreement with the property owner on the 1 finger, that property would only be used as access. I believe I showed that on my exhibit. And then the other property in question, that is a finger, I have noted as forest conservation area. If a development were to be processed, that area would only be forest conservation area. On my exhibit that I submitted, there is an area designated for development. So I think that touches on the major concerns, and I would request that the board reevaluate and recommend approval of the R15.
Thank you. Questions from board members? No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Weber, is it Ray?
I raised my name, middle name, it's whatever.
Mr. Weber, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I was Daniel Arundel, Virginia, and I live on a building which is Ray. I live at 7715 Locust Wood Road, Severn. I'm actually talking about an next door neighbor, 7700 Locust Wood Road. I use neighbor in quotes. He's operating a large construction business in an R2 zone residential property. He has 12 or more work trucks, 15 to 20 workers, 2 large trailers to haul items that won't fit in the trucks, a commercial dumpster that's exchanged out on a regular basis, a warehouse facility that's 3 or 4 times the size of the house, and no one has lived in that house for 3 to 4 years. This begs the question of what good is zoning if the county does not have the resources to enforce the zoning? Okay, on the same property, the builder began rebuilding one of the accessory buildings. This was originally a farm about 100 years ago from rubble. Last August, as soon as he purchased the property, without any permits, he was stopped after we complained about the construction. Unfortunately, last winter, the building permits department issued a renovation permit for that rubble. I was not aware that it also has a forest conservation easement existing on the property. The builder has removed trees and graded to the north of the house and the driveway within the forest conservation area. With complaints, the building inspector responded to cease that activity. But the damage was already done to that part of the forest conservation property. We discovered that the building permits and inspections department does not know when there is a forest conservation easement on properties. Okay, in the county, unless the builder volunteers that information, now the property has a new foundation they put in. The wall is over 8 feet tall, 40 feet long, and that is now built on the forest conservation property to the east of the already oversized accessory buildings. The building permits department is at a disadvantage as they have no way of knowing the current zoning map, whether a property has a forest conservation area on it or not. One of our neighbors, 3 houses south of us on Locustwood Road, has had problems buying their house as the garage that was built previously to them buying the property was entirely constructed on the forest conservation area. This seems to be a major problem the county needs to rectify in the current zoning system. The property lines in the current online zoning map also have errors, okay, that need to be corrected, all right? I pointed this out, that information is sent to a set of Plot 10 GIS zoning team, so that hopefully they will correct it, because you have stated on the CSR3 SEN 5186 that is partially R1. Or actually, that R1 isn't on this property at all. It's actually in, a space that actually is the BG&E electric power line, which is north of the property. Okay, so there was no need to do that zoning change, but it scared me because this guy's running a business there. And I figured if you're gonna do changes, I'm gonna oppose any kind of change to have him continue to run this business there. And that's why I'm here.
Question. Do you have pictures that you can submit as written testimony, please?
I have submitted pictures to the zoning inspector, thousands of them, as to where all the trucks in and out. Okay, I've also provided the plot plans for the house, where the house is. Like I said, this was originally a farm. Okay, old farm buildings, about 100 years old, some of them. Okay, the previous owners has filed actually purchased that property. I'm guessing about 15, 20 years ago. He sold it this past August, not this August, the previous August, to this builder. And this builder promptly is developing it into a commercial property that he should never have done.
Thank you. Submit that along with the address.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have, what I just stated, I have it in writing here for copies for you. Because you can only submit one thing on your site, so I submitted the plot plan. Okay?
So this is about 6 acres, right? And it's one.
It's 6.64 acres.
And it's one house on it.
There is one house on it, and the accessory buildings are old farm buildings that basically are already about 3 or 4 times the size of that house. He's turning it into business and should never have had the ability to do that.
Acres.
Thank you. Let me have the mic, please.
Thank you.
Any questions? Owner Elizabeth, questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if we can get as much information as we can. I saw what he submitted as a handout. But it's still additional information would be welcome. Thank you.
Mr. May, you're next, and then Laura Ellis.
I will forward you the communications that we have already had for the zoning inspectors, okay? It's so many emails back and forth that basically they're possibly overwhelmed.
Thank you. Mr. May, 7410 and 7412 B&A Boulevard. For board members, this is a new request. We do not have a CZ number.
May, 7410 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard, Chairman and Board, thank you for this opportunity. I was recently a volunteer on Region 3 SAC and thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to thank the county staff. They are tireless in their efforts to get 2040 done. I can't imagine how time they put in. But I'm here to speak of the rezoning of my property at 7410 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard. And my neighbor Patrick Smith at 7412 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard. We're zone C2, currently being used as our offices. We're small Cape Cods with a hope of redevelopment. We're across the street from the 7409 B&A Boulevard, slated for redevelopment. This is the 30-acre county piece with 13 buildable acres and a mixed use under the TOD overlay. The TC overlay is Town Center overlay is 4 blocks to our east up B&A Boulevard. We're adjacent to a W2 to our west. We are interested in the flexibility and redevelopment and will be helpful with a C3 or mixed use using the TOD overlay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Michael, can you check Laura Ellis was virtual? While we check for the virtual, next speaker, Guy Stanton, you already got that, you already spoke. Okay. Is it Jim Lovejoy?
You're on there.
Okay. Did he say Laura is available? Okay. Okay. Mr. Lovejoy, you're on deck.
Good evening,
Laura, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Very
Uh,
good, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Laura Ellis, 7814 Truett Lane, Severn, Maryland, 21144. I'm in the Severn Crest community. I am one of the HOA board members, and I'm speaking on behalf of my community. We have two major concerns, and that is the intersection of Minnetonka and 170. It is extremely dangerous. We are a 55+ community sandwiched in between multifamily communities. As your board member Elizabeth alluded to earlier, 170 and Reese Road are already parking lots. We have been requesting a light or something to protect us since 2009, every single year since that time, and we have also submitted petitions and we will continue to do so. It is very dangerous to also leave out of Twin Oaks because it is not a 90-degree intersection and neighbors have actually had accidents. That's a really weird intersection on Reese Road and Twin Oaks, and it's extremely dangerous there as well. We are also very concerned about Buckingham Nursery Road with a 45 unit going into that to be developed with no access except through Minnetonka and Buckingham Nursery Drive. I'm sorry, I don't know the zone number, but that street is narrow. We are a 55+ community. Twin Oaks would be affected, as well as Minnetonka. That would bring enormous amount of additional traffic. We already have another community that was added to us, and we've already had problems with speeding. And we want to keep our 55+ status. So please reconsider that 45 units. We want people to have housing, but we don't think the only way in and out is through a very narrow residential street. And if the county allows it, we are petitioning that they open up that area on 170 and add a light to our area and another area. We don't want to have to die to get in and out of our community safely. Please consider these issues, as we want to be, as older adults, most of us are veterans, like my husband. We have a neighbor who fought in World War II. We have a neighbor who fought in Vietnam War. We have paid the price to keep our community safe from exorbitant traffic noise, and we don't mind if people live in our area, but they need another way in and out. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Question from board members?
What is the name of the active adult community? Is it Severn Crest?
Yes, that's Severn Crest. It's off of Minnetonka, leads us in from 170, and it's Truett Lane, Buckingham Nursery Drive, Buckingham Nursery Circle. Though we only have 3 streets, and then we're sandwiched in other communities.
Just to clarify, your request, ma'am, is for a light and safer intersection. That's the bottom line.
Well, it's very dangerous, yes.
Yeah,
And
okay. I just want to make sure that there was no specific zoning. It's about the traffic and the congestion and safety.
Well, it does concern zoning if you add more housing, and then it makes it more dangerous for us to get in and out. And I'm going to use every public forum I can to advocate for my community.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Ludwig?
Thank you, sir. Jim Lovejoy. My address is 8019 Ponderosa Drive, Severn, Maryland. The zoning, as I understand it, is CZR3 SVN 5165. There's also another zone on this bounded property of mine, CZR3 GBN 5167. This neighborhood was established in 1983. It's 17 homes on this dead-end street. The dead-end street abuts the Fort Meade property. The property is bounded by Fort Meade on one side and a floodplain behind the property.
It was rezoned according to the draft plan from R1 to R2. And in the wooded area behind the house, the floodplain included is R10 rezoning draft plan. I'm asking that the draft plan rezones, that the property retain an R1 zoning. The two zoning designations I gave you split the property at an odd angle such that no one could really build on it and have any advantage. The wooded area behind the house, again, is a floodplain, and that is owned by Fort Meade. Most of it, and I understand the rest of it is owned by a gentleman named Zorn. But that property is not very large. I'll say just a few acres. And to make it an R10 wouldn't be wise unless we went to eminent domain and started tearing up people's houses. I would ask that the wooded area be rezoned or zoned as OS. So we preserve the neighborhood, we get some natural environment going, and we preserve the Severn watershed stream that's behind the house. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is. And so is this article.
Any questions from board members?
So this is for the zone goes clear on over here.
The next speaker is Alexander Plunk. And then after that, Susan and Kevin, it looks like Ridgely. Mr. Plunk? Please state your name and address, please. Thank you. The floor is yours.
My name is Alexander Brunk. I live at 411 Yellow Drive, Glenburnie, Maryland 21060. We go to touch on pedestrian safety on some major corridors near my house. On Mountain Road, we recently had a signal installed in order to alleviate rush hour traffic toward the elementary school a little behind our house. And that intersection currently lacks one crosswalk in order to assist with left turns, but if a crosswalk signal was installed, then pedestrian crossing probably would not conflict with it. And also there's many sidewalks that are disconnected by like a business. One of the crosswalks goes across New Freetown Road and then across 177. It ends and then there's, I believe, a mechanic and the crosswalk starts again a little later. So I'd like to have crosswalk or sidewalks just reconnected throughout the area. And also there is a crosswalk directly adjacent to my house that has had speeding issues for a while. The speed limit on the street is 25 and it's a one-way. You're gonna just cut through traffic, and you've seen people going like 35, 40 miles an hour on a crosswalk right next to the school. And also the road was repaved a few years ago, but the crosswalk was never painted. So it's just like a half crosswalk marking. So I would like to have a raised crosswalk in order to alleviate speeding and also just make it a little more visible. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. Susan or Kevin Ridgely? After Mr. Ridgely speaks, Michael Matthews. Mr. Ridgely, the floor is yours.
My name is Kevin Ridley. The property address is 827 Stevenson Road, and the number is CZ R1 SVN 007. I'm here, I guess, in support. We already went to the last meeting. The OPZ and the Stakeholder Advisory Board had recommended our change from R2 to R5. And I'm just here to, I didn't want to miss any meetings to just make sure that we're still involved. The R5, we just received public sewer upgrade a couple years ago, so sewer access to the property now. They've just redone the intersection at Stevenson Road, and we've upgraded the sidewalks and the red light. And it's my understanding that most of the property on that side of the road is recommended to be upzoned to R5. Yes, and everything that we need is there. And I think a lot of people have a misconception when it was zoned R2, that when a piece of property is zoned R5 and it's 4 acres, that means we can put 20 houses there, and we can't. We could put 7 as it stood, and we want to put like 12 there now, just to try to keep the cost of the infrastructure down. You have to leave that space, space for green space and the roads and all that. What's that? So I'm just here to ask for your support.
Thank you. Question from board members? Thank you. Okay, Michael Matthews, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Michael Matthews, and I want to talk about 3 different properties. The first property is 7464 East Furnace Branch Road, which is a car lot that has been existing since the early 70s.
The CZ number on the first property is GBN 0011.
Thank
The next
you.
one is GBN 0010. And then the other one, the last is GBN 0005.
Sorry, Gus, what was the second one? 11 and 5, and what was the second one?
11, 10, and 5.
Thank you.
Okay, and the 7464 has been a car lot which has been under C3 non-conforming, which doesn't allow me to do any upgrades at all. And I meet the criteria because I have highway use in front of me and behind me. The other property is 7462, which is adjacent to that. I am C3 non-conforming, and basically I'm a contractor, so if I could get C4 for both of those I would appreciate it, because it would fit the criteria. I've done all my site development plan, I've done the traffic study, I've done reforestation, stormwater management, I've been through every obstacle to stay legal, and I want to continue to be legal. I will not impact Furnace Branch Road at all. The third property is beside Conrad Bittinger, which when I bought it, they downzoned it to R10. I have no use for it, and I can't do nothing with it. So when we submitted the application, we wanted some kind of upgrade, but if we could go to C4, because the last meeting they supported W2, but C4 would suit my use more, and it would match what Conrad is asking for also. Thank you very much for your time.
What's the address of the third property?
It's just a parcel.
Oh, it's a parcel.
It's just a parcel.
We do have a few questions.
Okay.
The 7464 East Furnace Branch Road, 0.4 of an acre. What is the current use of 7464?
It's a car lot, non-conforming. Car lot.
Okay, car lot.
Been here since the early 70s.
And 7462, current use.
It's used for small, mechanical repairs.
Okay, thank you. Is there any use currently on Solly Road parcel?
No, I haven't got to that part, but I couldn't do nothing with it now because it went down to R10, and I'm never gonna put a townhouse there. It's only like a little over an acre. And I'm right
Okay.
next door to Conrad. I do what he does. Yeah.
Okay, board members, questions?
I have a question.
Elizabeth?
If we start with 0005, it's currently R10. The requested zoning was W1. Split recommendation between C2 and W1, but now he's asking for C4?
Well, like the last meeting, they agreed upon W2, because I needed something. I didn't know what to ask for. But right now, I can't do nothing with R10. And I'm adjacent to Conrad. I'm in the same line of work that he's in, so C4 will be perfect. I'm just in support of what he's asking for would match. I'm in agreement with that also.
When you refer to what he's asking for, who is he and what number?
Conrad Bittinger. I don't know his address there. He spoke, one of the first speakers that we had.
He's GBN 0023.
Yes, GDN 0023, Elizabeth. Okay, Lawrence, you have a question?
I was just gonna ask, is that your whole property? Is that the entire property all the way down to the highway buffer?
What's that now?
Does your property reach to the highway buffer?
Yes. It goes to the front of Sotley Road.
Okay, what's in the rear of the property?
Nothing. Woods.
Okay.
Mike,
You're talking about.
they're talking about your Furnace Branch.
Oh, First Branch?
Yeah.
Oh, Route 10. Route 10.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I was, okay, so you do go all the way back.
All the way back to 10, yes, that's
correct.
correct.
Okay. So you're.
Okay, Elizabeth and Dawn, the rear of the Furnace Branch property is Route 10. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Matches.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Michael, did we have another virtual? Check on that. At this time, I do not have any other speakers that have signed up. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? If so, you're welcome to come down. Raise your hand. Making it way too easy. Hey, we have until 9 o'clock. Okay, yes.
No hands raised online.
Okay, a couple of things. First off, most important, the SAC, which is the Stakeholders Advisory Committee, is a committee that has met many of you property owners have talked with the members of the SAC. They work with planning and zoning, and then they make their recommendations. I want to thank all the SAC members for all their time and hard work in preparing all of this information for us that we now have to look at. Also, thank all the planning and zoning staff for all of their hard work. I will tell you, if you go on the map, and I'm not a computer guy, I missed all that. But when you go on the website, it is very easy to maneuver. Give it time to load up. You can put a property address in or a CZ number, it'll come right up and it will really answer questions for you. So if you have a question of what is happening to the property next to you, around the corner, down the road, look it up. Go online, go to the website and look it up. And it's really, really user friendly. Also, written testimony for Region 3 will be accepted until 11:59 p.m. on October 23rd. Written comments can really help us, whether it's a site plan, a picture, a photo. It really does, picture says 1,000 words. So it really will help us. If you have any written testimony, please submit it through the website. And that is up until 11:59, October 23rd. If you do not have access to a computer, you're welcome to mail in your response or give Jessica a call at Planning and Zoning. She'll help you through that. So at this time, board members, any comments or questions?
Thank you all.
Okay, Jessica, anything, Michael, anything administrative?
Hi, Jessica Levy, Planning Advisory Board Secretary. Chair Kurtz, thank you so much for your praise about the website and how easy it is to use. For folks who aren't familiar with the website, on September 18th, the Planning Advisory Board had a briefing from Office of Planning and Zoning staff, which included a tutorial of that website. So that is available on the website. You can watch the video from October 18th. In the comments or like in the caption of that YouTube video, there's a direct link to when the tutorial starts. And you can easily access that tutorial to learn how to use that interactive zoning viewer.
Thank you, Jessica. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting. Second.
Second, the motion's been made to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.